What's going on, everyone? So we're going to get into how to move players in and out of your starting lineups on the desktop and the ESPN Fantasy app. So stay tuned for the video. There'll be more tips and tricks in the video. So let's get into it.
What's going on, guys? I'm going to show you today how to edit your lineup for women's fantasy basketball. We're going to go over things like moving players in and out of your starting lineup, looking at roster news, looking at stats. So stay tuned for that. So as we're looking at our lineup right now, let's, for example, click on Courtney Vandersloot. So right here, it's going to give you options to drop the player. It's also going to give you an option to consider trade offers. So this, if you click consider trade offers, it'll give you options to flag your players to let the league mates know if you're either interested in trading for this or interested in trading this player, or you're not interested in trading this player. Now, if we continue to scroll down, you can see who her next matchup's going to be. So obviously it's going to be against the Mystics. And if we continue going down, it's going to show you her season stats. This will change throughout the season. Obviously, it's just a projection now because season hasn't started. You can also look at her Outlook summary. And then if you keep scrolling down, you can look at her game log. So every time she completes a game, you'll be able to see her full stats. This allows you to look back and to determine if you want to play her over another person maybe in the future. If you continue to scroll down, you can see the recent news. You can go to all news right here, and you can see the updates pertaining to Courtney Vandersloot. So it looks like she's been dealing with a concussion. I can take that into consideration when developing my lineup for Friday's games. Now, if we go back up, right here, position rank, average points in minutes. This will always update throughout the season, depending on how she's doing. Percentage rostered right here. This is how many people that are playing women's fantasy basketball have her on a roster. So we're going to go ahead and close her out. Now, if you want to edit lineup, select edit lineup at the top. And this is how you can move your players in and out of your starting lineup. So as you can see to the right, there's an opponent. So obviously all of these players are playing on Friday that are in my starting lineup. So say it's Saturday, and say Courtney Vandersloot doesn't have a game on Saturday, but Ryan Howard does. So all I would do is select move, and then I would select here next to Ryan Howard's name, and it would move Ryan Howard into my starting lineup for that game. Now, as we mentioned before, you always want to have as many players who have a game in your starting lineup. So let's move Courtney Vandersloot back, and we will go ahead and press cancel. Now, if you look at the top where it says current, if you were to press the right arrow, it will take you to Saturday, May 20th. So let's go back to edit lineup. As you can see, I only have 3 players with games on Saturday. So they're all in my starting lineup. And these players down here don't have any games. Now I can either drop people and pick up people that actually play on Saturday, or I can leave these people in my lineup and just not accumulate points for that day for those certain players. Now, this is where strategy comes in. Obviously, you're not going to drop a Nalissa Smith, a Shakira Austin, or even a Benai Jelani. But maybe you think about dropping maybe a Courtney Vandersloot. This is all of your preference. Preferably, I want to see how these players play throughout the week. And I'll see what their role is on the team, and then I will make my decisions after that. So right now, I'm just going to leave the lineup how it is. I'm going to try and get the points I can from these 3 players, and I will move on from there. Now, if we want to see the matchup, so let's go to the matchup tab. Obviously, every team is going to be without a player playing for that day. So if we see my opponent, A'ja Wilson won't be playing, but he has to keep him in your lineup because you're not going to drop A'ja Wilson. So everyone's going to go through these struggles of not having someone in their lineup. It's just being aware of maybe injuries. So if we go back to our roster, another way you can look at roster news is in the left-hand corner. right here, select roster news. So this is where you'll get all your updates on individual players. Right now I only have an update on Courtney Vandersloot and Ryan Howard. Usually these update throughout the week, updates on practice, after games, how the player did during those games. This is where I come to just get a debrief of the player, and it helps me strategize for the next game. So that is how you move players in and out of the lineup. That's how you can check on their statuses. That's also how you can check roster news. So if you have any questions concerning these areas, feel free to leave a comment, and I will answer them as soon as possible so you are ready for Friday's games.
All right, so you just saw how to navigate the ESPN Fantasy app with moving players in and out of their lineup. Now let's go over the desktop version. It is pretty similar, but it is easier to show on the desktop. So right here, you see my roster. Let's say right here, Ryan Howard isn't playing on May 19th, and I need to put a player in. So I look at my bench. Courtney Vandersloot actually has a game on May 19th. So what we're going to do, we're going to select move next to Ryan Howard's name and select here next to Courtney Vandersloot's name, and they're going to swap spots. So now Courtney Vandersloot is in my starting lineup. It's obviously pretty similar to the ESPN Fantasy app, but on the desktop, you can actually see an overview of what's trending, the schedules, and the news. So let's dig a little deeper. So if we click the news tab, you'll be able to see the player news. And all you have to do is hit the drop down arrow, and it'll go into a more in-depth look of what that news means for that player. Also, if we go to schedule at the top, it's going to give you the upcoming schedule of when each player is going to play throughout that fantasy week. So it looks like Courtney Vandersloot only has 2 games within the first fantasy week. So I'm going to need to do some work there. Also, if we go to trending, you'll be able to see their roster percentage. It's something we touched on while I was going over the app. It's just saying that 96% of people playing fantasy, women's fantasy basketball, have Courtney Vandersloot on their roster. Now, if we go to the top, you'll be able to see the current matchup. So right now it's obviously 0-0 because the season has not started yet, but you'll be able to keep track of the score throughout the week at the top of your team. Now, if you wanted to plan ahead, all you have to do is come here. It says set lineup, and it'll give you the whole entire week you'll be playing. Just click right here, May 20th, Saturday, and you can move your players in and out of your starting lineup for that day. Like we always say, please put players that are playing that day in your starting lineup. I know that you will not always have a full lineup of starters, but just make sure people that are on your bench are being moved into the starting lineup daily. You can drop players, but like I said before, I kind of want to see how these players play the first week. I want to see their roles. I want to see if they're worth keeping for later. So right now, the first matchup, all I'm doing is putting people who have games in my starting lineup, and I'm hoping to accumulate the most amount of points for that week. So as you can see, it is pretty similar to the app, pretty easy to explain. If you do have any questions, please leave a comment. I will get back to them as soon as possible to have you ready for your Friday matchups. Stay tuned for more tutorials and more content throughout the week.